Look, imagine this for a second. You check your bank account right now, and you see $10,000 sitting there. Not life-changing money. Not retirement money. Just $10,000. For a lot of people, that number represents years of saving. Maybe you skipped vacations. Maybe you worked overtime. Maybe you resisted buying things everyone around you was buying. And now you finally hit $10,000. But then something weird happens. The money just sits there. Maybe it's in a savings account earning 0.3% interest. Maybe it slowly disappears into random expenses. A new phone here. A weekend trip there. A treat-yourself moment. And suddenly, that $10,000 you worked so hard to save is back down to $7,000. Or $4,000. Or worse, zero. And here's the frustrating part. If you ask most people how to turn $10,000 into $100,000, they'll say things like, start a business, find the next Bitcoin, get lucky in the stock market. But here's the thing. None of those are reliable strategies. The truth is, turning $10,000 into $100,000 doesn't require luck. It requires 3 very specific money rules. And once you understand them, you'll realize something shocking. The difference between people who stay stuck financially and people who quietly build wealth often comes down to just a few simple behaviors. It would take about 116 years to reach $100,000. Yes, 116 years. So unless you plan on living to 140 years old, that strategy isn't going to work. Now compare that to the historical return of the S&P 500, which has averaged about 10% annually over the last century, according to data from Ibbotson Associates and Morningstar. At 10% growth, $10,000 becomes $25,000 in about 10 years, $67,000 in about 20 years, $174,000 in about 30 years. Same money, different mindset. Now you might be thinking, yeah, but stocks are risky. And you're right. Stocks do go down sometimes. But here's what most people don't realize. Over every 20-year period in modern history, the S&P 500 has never produced a negative return. Not once. The real risk isn't volatility. The real risk is never allowing your money to grow at all. Now this is where it gets really interesting. Because rule number 2 is the reason some people reach $100,000 far faster than others. And it has nothing to do with intelligence. It has nothing to do with income. It's about automation. Here's the thing. Humans are terrible at making consistent financial decisions. We get emotional. We panic when markets drop. We overspend when we're stressed. We delay investing because we think we'll start next month. But wealthy people solve this problem in a very simple way. They remove themselves from the decision. They automate everything. And the data backs this up. According to Fidelity Investments, investors who use automatic contributions and automatic index investing outperform manual investors over time. Why? Because automation eliminates the psychological mistakes. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine 2 people. Person A invests $10,000 once, then never adds another dollar. Person B invests $10,000, but also adds $300 per month automatically. Now let's assume a 10% annual return. After 20 years, Person A ends up with about $67,000. Person B ends up with about $274,000. Same starting money. Massively different outcome. And the difference wasn't skill. It was consistency. Automation turns investing into something like a subscription service. Except instead of paying Netflix, you're paying your future self. Now this rule might be the most important one. Rule number 3 is simple. Protect the journey to $100,000 at all costs. Because the first $100,000 is where the hardest work happens. Charlie Munger once said, the first $100,000 is a B*********. And he was right. Because before $100K, your money isn't doing much work yet. You are. But after $100K, the math starts to change dramatically. Let me show you something. At 10% annual growth, $10,000 grows about $1,000 per year. That's nice. But it's not life-changing. Now look at $100,000. At 10%, that money grows $10,000 per year, without you doing anything. That's the same amount it took years to save initially. This is the moment when money starts working harder than you do. And this is why protecting the path to $100,000 is so critical. Because most people sabotage themselves right before reaching it. The lifestyle trap. Here's what usually happens. Someone saves their first $20,000 or $30,000. They start earning a little more money, and suddenly, their lifestyle expands. A nicer apartment, a newer car, more expensive habits. This is called lifestyle inflation. And according to a study by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, consumer spending increases almost exactly in proportion with income for most households. Meaning, people earn more money, but their net worth barely changes. Here's what wealthy people do differently. They freeze their lifestyle while their income grows. So if someone goes from earning $50,000 to $70,000 per year, they don't suddenly start spending $70,000. They keep living like they make $50,000, and they invest the difference. That's how the wealth gap quietly forms. The psychology of the first $100,000. Now let's talk about the mental side of this. Because money isn't just math. It's psychology. Saving the first $100,000 often feels slow and frustrating. You might invest for 5 years and only see your portfolio reach $30,000 or $40,000. And that's the moment many people quit. They think, this isn't working. But here's what most people don't realize. The compounding curve is exponential. It starts slow, very slow. Then suddenly, it accelerates. Think about pushing a snowball down a hill. At the top, it's tiny. You have to push it yourself. But as it rolls downhill, it gets bigger, heavier, and eventually it moves on its own. That's exactly how wealth works. Putting it all together. So let's recap the 3 rules. Rule number 1. Stop protecting your money from growth. Invest in assets that historically grow faster than inflation. Rule number 2. Automate everything. Automatic investing beats emotional decision-making. Rule number 3. Protect the path to $100,000. Avoid lifestyle inflation until your investments gain real momentum. If someone follows these 3 rules, even starting with just $10,000, reaching $100,000 becomes almost inevitable. Look, most people will watch videos like this and think, yeah, that makes sense. And then they'll do absolutely nothing. Because the advice sounds too simple. But simple doesn't mean easy. And it definitely doesn't mean ineffective. The truth is, wealth rarely comes from complexity. It comes from consistency, small decisions, repeated for years, until one day you wake up, check your account, and realize your investments have quietly crossed 6 figures. Not because you were lucky, not because you were a financial genius, but because you followed 3 simple rules most people ignore. If you made it this far in the video, comment 100K below, because that number represents something powerful. Not just money, but freedom, security, and momentum. And if you want to learn how to reach your first $100,000 faster, make sure to subscribe. Because on this channel, we break down the psychology, math, and strategies behind real wealth. And trust me, once you understand how money actually works, everything about your financial future starts to change.